The Precursors were a hyper-advanced race. The Forerunners classified them as transsentient beings, having the ability to travel among galaxies and accelerate the evolution of intelligent life at will. While the Precursors themselves had long since been hunted to near extinction, and thus been absent for the galaxy and the universe at large for millions of years, evidence of their existence continues to litter the galaxy, and exists at the very core of some of the Forerunners' most esoteric but foundational constructs. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and the Bestarium, a deep dive into the respective species of the Halo universe. And we are down to the final 3 videos of the Bestarium, pending potential new species entering the Halo universe in future entries into the franchise. In the next video we will look at the Xalanin, otherwise known as the Endless, and in the final video, Artificial Life. But in today's video, we take a closer look at the Precursors. The beings known as the Precursors arrived in the Milky Way galaxy as creators and caretakers billions of years ago. Dreamers and makers whose minds transcended many realms. The Precursors seeded uncountable worlds with the building blocks of life, built cyclopean laboratories made of crystallized reality, forged roads through alternate dimensions to link their great works, and began a grand experiment to create and uplift new sentient species. Their ultimate goal is unknowable, but the Precursors' actions were guided by the mantle of responsibility, a philosophy and set of ethical rules that compelled them to protect and preserve diversity of life ahead of their own self-interest. The true physical appearance of the Precursors remains a mystery to this day, owing to their transsentient nature. As described by the Gravemind, they were capable of adopting more or less any form, material or immaterial, at will, having evolved and reshaped themselves over billions of years. While their full range of manifestations is unknown, at least 3 distinct forms have been described in some detail. One such form, possibly an early or juvenile stage, resembled green teardrop-shaped plants roughly the size of melons. When exposed to light, these organisms would unfurl broad, leathery leaves that swayed with an elegance reminiscent of a dancer's bow, revealing a luminous burst of white blossoms suspended from delicate, lantern-like stems. Another known manifestation of the Precursors was the Primordial, a colossal being encased in a mold-like structure on Charam Hakor that measured approximately 15 meters tall and 11 meters wide. When the Erdidactyl encountered it there, he described a grotesque insectoid figure. It had a head resembling that of a Eurypterid, an ancient sea scorpion allegedly seeded on various worlds by the Precursors, including Earth. The creature featured 4 arms, each with 3 fingers and a central opposable thumb, 2 withered legs and a long segmented tail emerging from the base of its skull, ending in a 2-meter-long barb. Its head was flattened with compound oval eyes and insectoid mandibles. Later, when observed aboard Installation 07, the Primordial was described with even more spider and insectoid traits, including a multitude of legs curled beneath its bloated, distended torso. Its skin bore a glassy, crystalline sheen, and it constantly shed a fine powder, possibly flood spores or the decayed remnants of the original Precursor transformation material. As a Gravemind class entity, it exhibited a limited ability to alter its shape, such as shifting its limbs at will. However, due to the extensive mutations it underwent to endure across eons, the Primordial likely bore little resemblance to its original form or to other Precursors of its era. It may have been a singular anomaly, a warped, surviving fragment of a species long since extinct. The most widely recognised and thoroughly documented manifestation of the Precursors within the Milky Way is their transformation into the Flood, a terrifying, highly infectious parasitic species that propagates by consuming sentient beings possessing enough biomass and neural complexity to host them. This monstrous form emerged from corrupted remnants of precursor biology, twisted over time into a perverse reflection of their original purpose. On the planet of Netherop, fleeing precursor entities, at least two by some accounts, adopted a far subtler appearance, manifesting as a glowing pearl-like ambience surrounding the figure of Rosa Fuertes, a surreal and symbolic echo of their once immaterial presence. Beyond this, while the Gravemind said they were capable of adopting any form, we have no such records of what those forms looked like. Before they vanished, the Precursors reshaped the galaxy with tools of metal, flesh, and energy that were linked across space and time using neural physics, a transcendent science incomprehensible to lesser minds. The Precursors sailed between worlds in vessels guided by knowledge engines, but also walked on star roads, bridges of unbreakable filaments that wove in and out of the deepest layers of slipspace. With boundless intellect and patience, millions of solar systems were re-engineered by the Precursors and populated with what would eventually, after eons of growth, tending, and evolution, become new tools and companions. Neural physics were the Precursors' technology, which was so intrinsically merged with their own biology that they were practically one and the same. The Precursors believed that the universe itself was an animate entity on a vastly different scale and nature than organic beings, the foundation of neural physics. Through understanding and influencing this esoteric living aspect of space-time, the Precursors were able to manipulate reality and form virtually indestructible objects. In a notion echoed in the Forerunner concept of living time, they believed that all things experienced by life, good or ill, were only sweetness to the living universe. Consistent with these tenets, the Precursors wished to experience the hardships and struggles faced by all life firsthand by committing themselves to numerous cycles of evolution, technological advancement, death, and rebirth over and over again. The concept that inanimate matter and thought are inextricably connected and linked, and that the universe itself is effectively a living entity being the foundation of this neurophysical reality, defies logic. We are, after all, talking about a species which are fundamentally different than any of our preconceived notions of what life is. Any creature, at their absolute basic of instinctual drivers, are adversely affected by a few parameters: food, reproduction, and survival. Food is necessary for metabolism and life. Reproduction is essential for the continuation of the species, and survival is a visceral reaction to any mortal threat to an individual in question. This is, at its fundamental level, driven by near instinctual need to live, and not experience pain and death. The Precursors are transcendent, and although we don't know a massive amount about them, given their level of technological advancement, it is reasonable to assume they have evolved beyond the need for what we would conventionally call food. Reproduction appears to be something the Precursors as a species can consciously control completely asexually. We could liken the Precursors to a kind of extremely advanced, self-replicating cell. At face value, the fact that the Precursors can devolve themselves into a powder and change their form at will suggests their very biology does not necessitate reproduction in any conventional sense we are familiar with. The Flood are often referenced as being like a fungus, and that the quantum of the Flood is the Flood supercell, a singular, cellular spore-like particle that contains the entire potential and collective genetic diversity of the entire species. Since the Flood are devolved and corrupted Precursors, it would seem logical the Precursors also possess a similar biological process behind their existence. Finally, survival. Again, as a transcendent species, their ability to spontaneously choose to cycle themselves through the stages of life, evolution, death, and rebirth means that prime motivators such as survival over the course of time and an aversion to pain and death are entirely alien to the Precursors. The very definition of survival is the state or fact of continuing to live or exist, typically in spite of an accident, ordeal, or difficult circumstances. for an object, entity or practice that has continued to exist from an earlier time. So survival is defined by two parameters: existence and time. Existence is something the Precursors can't not do. Their very biology, much like the Flood, means that as long as a single cell of Precursor material exists, so will they. Their technological advancement and their intrinsic understanding and manipulations of reality on the basis of the fundamental of neural physics and the fact that the universe is alive means the Precursors likely exist at one with the universal consciousness, meaning that as long as the universe exists, so will they. And since time is a fundamental characteristic of the universe, time also doesn't apply to them. We could even speculate mind you, that the Flood supercell is a corrupted version of the, so to speak, quantum particle of the Precursors, that the Precursors themselves as a species are simply an assembly of supercells, and given that the building blocks of life, including amino acids and nucleotides, were believed to have emerged naturally through abiogenesis, suggesting that simple molecules formed spontaneously from inorganic compounds under very specific conditions, it could be speculated that the Precursor supercell emerged naturally and spontaneously through the living universe, then meaning that the Precursors themselves are simply a physical manifestation of the universal consciousness. But again, this is speculation based solely on what we observed with the Flood and through the limited information we know about the Precursors. Though it was long believed that the only remnants of the Precursors that still existed was the Flood, which itself was believed to have mostly been destroyed at the close of the Human Covenant War, it has become painfully obvious that not only have the Flood survived long past the wider galaxy's estimations, but the Precursors themselves may yet still exist. There are eerie connections between the Precursors and the Endless, otherwise known as the Zalanin. The librarian made efforts to reseed the Precursors free of their ancestral memory on her garden world of Bestiarum, now under the care of 343 Guilty Spark. There are entities that exist in realms and on worlds far distant in the galaxy that seemingly harken back to the Precursors, and even the Foreigners themselves during the height of their empire stayed away from the edges of the galaxy as if fearing something beyond its rim. It has become obvious in recent times that the ancient transcendent race of supreme beings, whom inhabited many forms and bent the universe to their will in one form or another, have returned to the galaxy. The Precursors embraced cycles of life, evolution, death and rebirth. When the Foreigners rose up against them, it was little more than another cycle coming to a close, to begin anew. This wouldn't have been an inconvenience to the Precursors. They would simply have accepted it and continued on regardless into the next cycle. To quote the Gravemind, a devolved Precursor himself, and one which shares the consciousness of the last Precursor, the Primordial, all life dies, all worlds too. And if there is guaranteed perpetual existence after that, what does it matter how the end comes? And further to this, those who created us were defied and hunted. Most were extinguished. A few fled beyond your reach. Creation continued. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels. my most loyal of enforcers. And every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.